I've always said fire doesn't lie. In my line of work, you learn to put more faith in a combustion chamber than in people. The retort doors seal with that heavy steel clang, the gas burners ignite with their low hiss, and then time and temperature take over. It's precise, clinical, almost comforting in its predictability. 30 minutes in, the chamber roars, and by the 3-hour mark, you've reduced a body to ash and bone fragments. That's my world. No mystery, no tricks, just heat, pressure, and patience. But what happened one evening in January has left me doubting every rule I thought I understood. It was late, after 8 o'clock, and the funeral home was quiet. The last service had ended hours earlier. The viewing room smelled faintly of lilies and stale coffee, but in the crematory it was just the sharper tang of gas, scorched metal, and a lingering sweetness from burning bone that clings to your clothes no matter how well you wash. I'd loaded a middle-aged man who had passed from heart failure, nothing unusual in the paperwork, nothing complicated in the prep. I keyed in the cycle on the digital panel, checked the gauges, and set the timer. Then I did what I always do. I sat on the metal stool, logged the case number in my binder, and waited for the chamber to do its work. The rhythm is always the same. At 40 minutes, you hear the low thunder as the heavier tissues ignite. At 90, the chamber hum evens out. I don't stare at the burners. I listen to the machines. Grant Miller, the other technician, jokes that I treat them like church bells, each sound meaning something only I can hear. That night, Grant had gone home early, and it was just me, the chamber, and the hollow tick of the wall clock. When the cycle ended, I pulled the tray out as usual, using the long rake to break up the bone fragments. They were pale, brittle, the way they should be. I let the material cool, then sifted it down into the ash pan. Everything looked ordinary until the air around the tray seemed to shift. At first I thought I'd kicked the exhaust fan on too hard, but the ashes weren't scattering outward. They were drawing together, rippling like water disturbed by a finger. I leaned closer, hands on my knees, heat from the tray still prickling my face. The movement wasn't random. The ash was folding in on itself, coalescing, and then, with a faint hiss, it rose. Not high, just a shiver of height above the tray, but enough to suggest shape. Shoulders, a head, the faint contour of arms. I froze, every muscle screaming to step back, but I stayed. I swear to God I heard it whisper, just one word, a name. Elliot. And then the form collapsed, falling silent into a lifeless heap of gray. I waited a long time before scooping the remains into the urn. My gloves trembled as I sealed the lid. I logged the case like normal, though I had to rewrite the line twice, my pen scratching through mistakes. I told myself it was exhaustion, shadows, airflow. Machines don't lie. The next morning, Marissa Dalton, our funeral home liaison, stormed into the crematory holding the very urn I'd filled. Her face was pale, angry. "Jonas, what the hell is this? It's empty." I didn't understand. I took it from her, twisted off the lid. Nothing. Just polished ceramic and the faintest dust at the bottom. I checked my records. The case number was logged, the urn was signed off, but the ashes, gone. Marissa muttered that she'd never seen me screw up before, but her voice cracked in a way that told me she wasn't sure it was a mistake at all. Later that week, Sylvie Hargrove came to collect her father's remains. She held the urn I handed her like a fragile heart, pressing it against her chest. She looked at me strangely and whispered, "He's still talking. I can hear him." I didn't answer. There was nothing inside that urn but sterile dust, yet she cradled it as if listening to something only she could hear. Grant caught me staring at the trays one night, long after we'd finished. "You look like you've seen a ghost," he said, trying to make light. That's when the ash pan rattled against the metal counter. No breeze, no vibration, just a sudden sharp clatter. His smile vanished. "Okay," he muttered, backing out of the room. "That's not funny."
I've been avoiding night shifts ever since. I'll trade hours, I'll take extra work during the day, anything to keep from being alone past midnight with the hum of the burners and the silence of the cooling trays. But I know it's not the machines I'm afraid of. It's that whisper, that name I never knew, hanging in the air like smoke that won't clear. And I keep wondering, if fire really doesn't lie, then what did it try to show me? And where did the ashes go when they left the urn?
Hello, YouTube family. Thanks for watching. Big love to our subscribers. You keep this channel alive. Only about 20% of viewers are subscribed, so if you enjoy the chills, hit that subscribe button. It's quick, it helps a ton, and it means more stories coming your way. See you in the next one, if you dare.
I've been at the crematory long enough to know what should and shouldn't happen inside a retort. 20 years, give or take, standing in front of the steel door while the burners roared and the chamber did its work. There's a kind of comfort in the order of it. The hiss of the gas, the whoosh as the flame takes, the rising numbers on the gauge. People like to think cremation is mysterious or poetic. It isn't. It's heat and math and patience. But what I saw that night stripped the math right out of me, left me staring into something I still can't name. And I'm writing this now because I don't think I can hold it in much longer. It started on a Thursday, close to midnight, after everyone else had gone home. The chapel lights were off, just the hum of the refrigeration unit in the prep room and the sodium lamps outside painting the parking lot orange. I was running a cycle from Mrs. Dalton, 83 years old, heart failure. I remember her because her daughter had pressed a rosary into my hand, asked me to keep it with her through the fire. We're not supposed to place anything combustible inside, but I slipped it onto her chest under the sheet before loading her in. That was the rule I broke. It felt harmless at the time, a small kindness. The burners kicked in like they always do, 3 jets igniting with a staggered rhythm, and I leaned against the counter with my logbook, listening to the steady roar. But 10 minutes in, I heard something I'd never heard before. A 4th ignition, sharper, like a hiss right behind my ear. I looked at the gauge, 1,200 degrees, climbing fast, far too fast. By the time it hit 1,500, I killed the fuel feed. Only the roar didn't stop. The heat surged louder, harder, as if the chamber had found its own supply. I remember wiping sweat off my neck, the air in the control room thick enough to sting my lungs even with the glass between me and the fire. I opened the chamber door too soon. The safety protocols say you wait, but I had to see what was happening. The heat that blasted out should have burned me raw, but it was dry, almost empty, like opening an oven with no dish inside. And that's what I saw. Nothing. No bones, no fragments, not even a smear of soot on the hearth. The stretcher tray was clean, stainless steel, as if it had never been used. I stood there, with my hand on the lever, stomach hollow, listening to the burners crackle from somewhere they shouldn't exist. The next morning, Donna Reese came into my office with her clipboard. She said, "Family's here for Mrs. Dalton's ashes." I told her there'd been a delay in processing, buying myself time. Her eyes narrowed. Donna doesn't like delays. By the second day, she was pressing harder, accusing me of losing the remains. I couldn't tell her the truth, that there was nothing left to give, nothing at all. Families don't want to hear that their dead vanished into a fire too hot to measure. It was Kyle, the new apprentice, who saw it next. He was logging identification tags in the prep room when he shouted for me, voice cracking. I ran in to find him white-faced, pointing at the observation window. The chamber had lit itself, flames whirling inside, though no one had turned it on, no fuel feeding in. In the glow, just for a breath, I saw a figure standing upright, arms loose at its sides, head tilted as if it were listening. The heat rolled off the glass, but the shape never wavered.
Kyle refused to come back after that, wouldn't even set foot in the building. George Whitman made it worse. He came by 2 nights later, tool belt slung in his hip, smelling of cut grass. He said, "Saw a woman walk your door last night. Thought it was one of the grieving families, but she didn't head to the lot. She walked straight out across the lawn toward the river." I asked him what she looked like, though I already knew. He said, "Older lady, white hair, holding something shiny in her hand. A rosary, maybe." Since then, I've heard the retort light itself when no one's around. I've smelled smoke in my clothes when the burners have been cold all day. The logbook on my desk shows cycles I never ran, times I never worked. When I close my eyes at night, I see that empty tray, cleaner than any machine could scour it, and I hear the hiss of a second flame sparking to life. I haven't told Donna the truth. I haven't called Kyle back, though he left 3 messages begging me to explain what he saw. George avoids me now, won't make eye contact. I come here alone, sit in the control room and listen. The machine waits for me. If anyone ever reads this, take it for what it is. Not a warning, not a plea, just the last thing I can put into words. I don't know where Mrs. Dalton went or what came through instead, but if you're ever near a crematory and you hear a hiss that doesn't belong to the burners, don't open the door, because something inside will already be standing there, waiting for you.
It was a Tuesday evening, late enough that the office lights were already off in the front. Just me, the retort, and the smell of disinfectant seeping into my clothes like it always does. I've run this crematory for 10 years, and the rhythm of it is steady. Load, seal, ignite, collect. Every step has its sound, its feel. The scrape of the gurney wheels across concrete, the click of the door latch locking, the low roar of the burners catching. There's comfort in procedure. It means nothing can be missed, nothing left uncertain. That night, I thought I was just finishing another case before going home. The delivery had come from Brian Keller, our regular driver. He's younger than me, always humming something under his breath when he brings the coffins in. I remember him saying, "Last one for the night, Claudia," as we lined it up on the track. Plain wooden box, nothing unusual. He helped me position it in front of the chamber, but he didn't linger. He never does. It was routine. He left, and I rolled it into place alone. I swung the heavy retort door closed. Normally, it takes effort, the hinges resisting until it seals with that deep metallic thunk. But this time, halfway through, the door jerked back against me, like someone inside was shoving it outward, hard enough that it nearly tore the handle from my grip. My first thought was mechanical, hinges catching, maybe air pressure shifting in the chamber. But the coffin hadn't been lit yet. The chamber was still and cold. I leaned in, checked. The box sat exactly where I'd rolled it. Nothing else inside. I told myself it was a jam and tried again. Only this time, before I could apply pressure, the door slammed shut on its own. The lock snapped into place so forcefully it made me flinch. A second later, the burners roared alive. That's when I heard it, the pounding, a hollow thud against steel, over and over, irregular and desperate. Then came the muffled sound that didn't belong in any crematory. A scream. Not loud, not clear, but a voice straining through walls meant to silence everything. I froze. My training told me to cut the cycle, and my body obeyed before my brain caught up. I hit the power, silenced the burners, disengaged the lock. The roar died instantly. I opened the chamber. The coffin sat untouched, the wood unscorched. But the inside walls of the retort, polished steel I'd wiped down just hours before, were smeared with black handprints, clear as if someone had pressed their palms against them, dragging down in panic. The marks were fresh, greasy to the touch, though when I wiped my gloves over them, they left no residue. I backed out, hands trembling. Tyler Finch, my assistant, had just come in from the prep room. He saw my face before he saw the chamber. When I told him what I'd heard, he laughed until the retort door rattled on its hinges, as if someone inside was shaking it from the other side. He went pale and muttered, "I heard it too." He quit the next day, sent me a text saying he couldn't keep working where screams came from the burners. I filed the report the way procedure demanded, logged the case number, timestamp 2114. I even reviewed the video footage, though the cameras only showed me pushing the coffin in, the door closing, then me standing frozen with my hand on the power switch. No sign of the pounding, no sound of the screams. Just silence, broken only by the hum of the building's ventilation. Janet Rowe, our office manager, dismissed it as fatigue, said maybe I'd imagined the sounds, maybe Tyler had too, out of suggestion. But she couldn't explain the handprints. She stood with me staring at them while the overhead fluorescence hummed. She touched the black smears herself, pulled her finger away like it burned. "Steel doesn't stain like that," she whispered, though later, in her notes, she wrote nothing unusual. Brian refused to help unload the next delivery. When I asked why, he just shook his head and muttered, "I don't go near that door anymore." He still drives the bodies in, but he won't cross the threshold, won't even look at the chamber. Since that night, every time I close the retort door, it rattles. Not always loud, sometimes just a faint tremor like something shifting on the other side. Other times, it shudders violently, as if fighting against the seal. I've checked the hinges, the locking mechanism, even had a technician inspect the entire unit. They say it's sound, operational, normal. But I know the sound of machinery. This isn't it. What I can't reconcile is the timing. The coffin that night was unlit. No gas running, no cycle started. There was nothing inside but wood and the body already at rest. And yet, handprints, screams, pounding, the kind of sounds that shouldn't exist in a place meant to reduce everything to ash. I don't believe in ghosts. At least, I didn't. The crematory doesn't allow space for that sort of thinking. It's about finality, about clean endings, about certainty. But when I press the start button now, I hesitate. I catch myself staring at the retort door, waiting for it to resist, to shake, to scream. And the silence after, when nothing happens, is somehow worse, because I can't tell if I'm relieved or if I'm just waiting for the next time it remembers. I'm writing this down not to convince you, but because I can't carry it alone anymore. The official logs will always say, "Cycle complete, remains processed." No mention of sounds, no mention of stains, just paperwork as clean as ash. But I know what I heard, and Tyler knows, and Janet will never admit it, but she felt the prints under her fingers. So I'll ask you, what do you think waits on the other side of a door like that? If you heard pounding from a chamber built to burn, would you believe your ears, or trust the paperwork that tells you nothing was there? See you in the next one, if you dare. And sometimes, when the building goes quiet after midnight, I swear I hear the retort door rattle, just enough to remind me that something inside is still trying not to be burned.